agenda order to factor in some folks' timing. Make sure I've got it, some version of the agenda pulled up, and we can dive right in. Okay. What do we got first here? All right. Am I looking at the April 15th? Okay, so we have the minutes from March. Does anyone have anything that they want to add or amend or otherwise? I would
move to approve.
What's that?
I move to approve.
Okay, we have
I second.
All right, all in favor of approving the March 18th minutes, say aye.
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 There you go. We'll take a voice vote, I think. All right, now let's, and if anyone has anything they want to change, or I know we're going to change up the order a little bit. We could start with beekeeping since we have Joyce here, or I know we're going to just kick the can, pun intended, if that's even a pun, on the compost and cardboard for a few minutes. So should we start with what is here, agenda item 6 or 5, solar? There's always solar to discuss, unfortunately. Otherwise, Amy, where do you want to begin?
Well, let's start with solar just because it's really quick.
Oh, sure.
I sent you a copy of the postcard. It's being printed right now and it's going out in mailboxes soon, and that will direct people to the website to take the solar panel survey, or they can request a hard copy if they don't want to go online. And then I also contacted the Mark Haggerty, and he will attend the Planning Commission meeting in May to answer any questions.
Okay, so right, if you go to the tiny URL on the postcard, that will take you to the city website with the survey, which is different in any ways that we want to discuss, or where it's all good and I'm just playing catch up a little bit and we're just gonna anticipate similar results as last time.
It's the same exact survey as we had online. We just are now sending the link to everybody so we get as many people as possible to participate.
Okay.
And I have a quick question about the survey. Is it smiley face, neutral, sad, or is it just yes, no?
Yes, no.
Okay, great. And
yeah, it's live now. Oh, can you actually fill it out? Yeah, you can fill it out now. Okay. We can wait like we do.
Yeah, we don't have to do it collectively. And is there some way for us to see the results before the Planning Commission meeting?
Yeah, I think I picked the date May 15th for it to end.
Okay.
And so you'll get the results before the Planning Commission sees them.
Great. Thank you.
So right, it breaks it
Amy,
out.
could you tell us when the Planning Commission meeting is in May?
May 24th.
Thank you.
Is there any prohibition on, can more than one member of the household complete the survey?
It's limited by IP address. So one IP address can participate.
So you can vote often if you have a phone and a computer, a tablet.
I had originally, heard something about they only wanted one person per household. That was really my main concern. I was not going to try. I have 5 different emails, but I don't intend to use that many. But
I don't think it asks, oh, it does ask for your email address, okay, but it name, oh, no, but that's this fourth question, if you would like a copy of the survey result, please leave your name and email address. So you don't, right, IP address is the, now, again, if you fill it out, if there's two surveys from the same IP address, it'll just flag it on the back end
Yeah,
and filter it out, okay. Okay, I mean, I don't think we need to like be planning for it to be winning by a nose and having to advocate that there should be two counted per IP address because there's multiple, whatever. Let's just we'll do what we can to disseminate it and encourage people to fill it out, and then keep fighting the good fight.
Absolutely.
All right.
I'm sorry, before we move on, can you guys explain, sorry, I'm jumping on just a little late, I just got home, about the IP addresses and how we're filtering for that if more than one per IP address happens?
it's
Response.
it's one of the options on SurveyMonkey is to sort it by IP addresses. So we'll get, I don't know if we're going to get a list of IP addresses and then we eliminate the ones where there's duplicates, or SurveyMonkey will do those on our behalf. I'm not sure how that back end works, but we did set it up so that there weren't going to be concerns that somebody who voted multiple times, from the same computer.
Yeah, I note though, it isn't from the computer basis. So there is a possibility we could get multiple IP addresses depending on where people are connecting. So for instance, if they're connecting at the rec center, at the library, if they share, a school, things like that, there could be multiple ones. More than one person works somewhere. So I would probably put a threshold on that. 2 might be too small. If it's like 4 or larger, then maybe that, but I wouldn't necessarily just do 2 because you might end up losing some legitimate responses.
Got it.
I mean, I'm just poking around like the help.surveymonkey.com. If all we're doing is tracking the IP addresses, then we'll be able to kind of interpret what we get. And if there's 20 and they're from the rec, there's not like a public computer terminal at the rec center or the library. It's not really, maybe these are not.
If you use Wi-Fi and you're connecting to the same place, it's just sort of like where you're place. It's not the terminal. It's
the Wi-Fi that you're connected to the internet via. Okay, well, if we get a strong response and and it's 10%, we can shave it off because some of the IP addresses are the same and it's still overwhelming majority pro solar, then we can not get stuck on the ballot box stuffing, because I don't think that's really, I think it's an issue of 2 or 3 people who happen to sit on the planning commission as opposed to any kind of majority or plurality of Huntington Woods residents. Aaron, do you have your hand raised?
Yeah, I was trying to be polite.
Oh, very
I don't want to belabor this, but yes, I agree. I agree with what Bridget just said. The only thing I would add is that I feel like we've already done our survey. This is another survey through the city / planning commission. So I wouldn't call it our survey.
Okay.
Like our survey is done and we found
by a
90%.
factor of
6
or 7.
So I'm expecting very similar results, and maybe that's it. I don't know if that's a correct interpretation, Amy, but that's the way I got out of the planning commission meeting.
I think that's fair.
They're more than fair. All right, so we will leave that there and pick up, where did my agenda go? We go bees. Do we want to do bees? What do we want to do? Where are we going next?
I wanted to raise my hand for a second there.
Sorry, I
that's
only can.
okay.
I'm on the phone because I'm
Oh,
gonna have to move at some point, so I can't see all of. I don't have like full gallery view. So if you need to just make a sound, go ahead. It's just go ahead, Danny.
I liked how Aaron was doing that. All right.
Yeah.
I know that I'm certain that our original our original survey was flawed. So I was talking to my wife and she was like, oh, I took it 8 times. And I was kind of annoyed at her for that, but also it was a little funny, but that she knows she shouldn't do that. But sorry guys.
That's okay.
So we would definitely want to filter for at least an IP address.
Yeah.
But for what it's worth, IP addresses are really easy to look up, but it's laborious. So let's talk bees. I am really glad that we're doing this through the city instead of through us. I know that annoys you a little, Aaron. I'm sorry. And one day when you're mayor, Aaron, you can lambast me correctly.
All right. Well, in that case, who wants to take be the queen bee of this conversation here as we figure out where we fit into the politics of bees?
I think we only have one commission. We only have one committee member who actually has bees. So, Mary, do you want
to be
lead
our
us? And then,
queen?
yeah.
Sure. I can tell you that the city's proposed ordinance is flawed in the sense that, first off, it's very old. And it was originally written in Ypsilanti, I believe, somewhere in the early 2000s. And at that time, Ypsilanti wanted to restrict the number of urban beekeepers they had. Since that time, since 2015, they've changed their ordinance to require their beekeepers to register for $25 a year. They allow 2 bees on any kind of acreage. There isn't any kind of limit on a half acre, quarter acre, eighth acre. And they require a water source for the bees. And that's essentially it. But one of the things that I think we should be aware of is that in the state of Michigan, there are only 3 cities that have bee ordinances, period. The only ordinances, or I don't even know if they're ordinances, but the only laws about beekeeping in the state of Michigan are primarily for people who are bee farmers that will have hundreds of bees at one time, hundreds of hives at one time, not bees. And they don't really apply to urban beekeeping. The state of Michigan does not have any kind of language about this. They defer their language to Michigan State University. Michigan State University indicates that if you are considering urban beekeeping, that no property less than a half an acre should have more than 4 beehives in it. They recommend a water feature to water the hives, and that's essentially it. They don't recommend registration. In fact, the state of Michigan does not require registration for any apiaries in the state, which is very unusual and very backward compared to the rest of the country. But Michigan is not proactive in saving the bees. So that being said, if you look at other states, there are very few states in the union who have beekeeping ordinances. The access, I don't know how to explain this, but where I found this Ypsilanti ordinance was actually on a bee supply company's website, and they hadn't updated it since about 2003. So it's hard to rely on that type of information. If you go state by state, it just depends on where you are. If you look at our local community, Royal Oak has just put public bees in a location for their community, which their only statement about bees is that they shouldn't sting anybody and they shouldn't be a nuisance. They treat them like dogs or cats. Nobody around us has them. In Oakland County, there are none. So I'm more concerned about the city reaction to perhaps a couple of complaints and wondering, is there a huge hue and cry about finding bees? Because I know that there's a woman on LaSalle that does not like the bees drinking out of the fountain there. But the problem with that is that bees are in trees. You will find bees in trees anywhere you go. We are Huntington Woods, and so we have a lot of trees and there are bees in them. I don't think that you can equate bees drinking out of a fountain with private or urban beekeepers, because you could get rid of all of the bees and there's still going to be bees drinking out of that fountain because we have old trees and that's where they like to live. So as far as what the environmental group can do, I think that we might want to support a scaled back ordinance. I love the idea of registering them for people who are working in public safety who may need to enter a backyard or enter an area where there are bees. I think that if we had people coming in from the cable companies or the telephone company, whatever, working on the poles in our backyard, they may want to know that. And having them registered, I think, is a very good idea, but not at $180. That's really exorbitant and prohibitive to entering into beekeeping or staying in beekeeping for that matter. I also like the idea of restricting the number of bees on any property simply because bees swarm, and you do not want a honeybee swarm entering into the wall of your garage or into a soffit in your house. And if you are not a good urban beekeeper, that will happen. Even if you are a good one, that can happen, but much more rarely. And so I like the idea of restricting the number of hives to 4. Speaking to beekeepers I know in the city, pretty much all of them have supported that. And then the water feature, there isn't a beekeeper that knows anything about beekeeping that doesn't have water for their bees, because we want to be able to control the type of water that they have access to. We really don't want them drinking out of puddles in the street, and certainly not in people's backyards who are sprayed with lawn pesticides or fertilizers that can be damaging to them. So reinforcing that is a good idea. Other beekeepers have suggested that they require, or we require as a city, urban, like some kind of beekeeping certification. However, there aren't any, so it's not possible to request that of our citizens because there aren't any. And that's essentially the point of view from other beekeepers that I've spoken to, and also my own opinion.
Could I ask a couple questions? And
Sure.
then maybe we can turn it over to Joyce and other people who actually know something. If anybody actually wants to fall asleep, I wrote a piece on non-Russian beekeeping from the early 1900s. So if you suffer from insomnia at any point, let me know. So I guess so. 2 questions. One is, Amy, can you tell us like what prompted this? How, like, was there kind of this wave of complaints from residents? And then the other question is kind of one of just procedure, like what can our committee do? Kind of bouncing off what Mary said, that is, can we suggest policy or anything like that to the commission?
On the latter, yes. You can make recommendations or suggestions, either a policy or an ordinance. And then my understanding from Hank, because I didn't receive any of the phone calls with that, there were 3 or 4 phone calls and they came in last year as well as this year.
Okay, so we're talking 2 or 3 a year then?
I don't know if it's 3 or 4 this year,
Okay,
3 or 4
okay.
next year. I know it's 3 or 4 this year, but I don't know
Right.
how many from last year.
Okay, and I said I would only ask 2 questions, but I actually have another one. The house on, it's on LaSalle, right? The house with the, that used to be the farm. I mean,
Yes.
I love their
Yeah, Richard,
beehive.
his name is, I think Richard Dominion.
Okay, how many
And
hives do they have?
well, that's a good question, Aaron, because he doesn't really have hives. He raises Russian queens. So he has
Oh.
nucleus there,
Okay.
not hives. And his nukes are really small. They're in a plastic sort of hive. I've never actually seen anything like that before. And he has, I don't think he has even one full hive in his backyard. And he has at least 8 water features in his backyard for his hives. So I know that there is a concern because the fountain is right across the street from him. However, I'm not sure that the bees are, they're not going to go further away from the hive to bring water into the hive. They're going to go to the closest source. So if you put it there, they're not going to take off and go 10 miles away, or even just across the street when they don't have to. So with all the water features that he has, I don't know. I mean, there may be some wild bees there. There is another beekeeper on LaSalle, but that beekeeper is even further away from the fountain than Richard's. But I will say that his next door neighbor, Robbie Lebo, I think has 2 hives on his property. And he also has about 4 water features, because I asked him, are these bees your bees? And he says, I don't know, because I've got all these water things too. So. But let me say one other thing about the concern about bees drinking from that fountain. The first thing is that Robbie cleans that fountain. He maintains it. He just brushes the bees away. He has never been stung. And one thing I will also tell you is that last year, and then probably again this year, we had a huge infestation of yellow jacket hornets, and they look very similar to bees, and they do sting multiple times. And I know that of the beekeepers I spoke to, I lost my hive in like 48 hours from yellow jackets. And I know that Richard lost hives, and I know that Nigel, who has hives on LaSalle closer to Coolidge, he lost both of his hives to yellow jackets last year. They were horrible. And every beekeeper I've talked to has lost some or all of their hives due to that. If the complaints are this year, we had a really early spring, and they're definitely flying. So not now, but they were flying. So I don't know what to tell you, because I know that Richard had his water stuff out. We want to control that. So don't know what to tell you. Amy, have we ever had have we ever had a problem with bees at the pool or anything like that that you're aware of?
Not that I'm aware of.
And I just wonder, I know we've had ducks, but
Mhm.
I wasn't sure about that. And yeah, I've had my hives in my backyard for I've had 4 years of urban beekeeping and then 4 years in Iowa on a farm. It's much more difficult to be an urban beekeeper. It's like crazy hard. And I just wondered because I'm close to the pool. I just wondered if they ever visited.
For clarification, Amy, so I know you've said that we get a couple calls each year on it. Are those calls specifically about people who are keeping bees, or are they about bees or something that could look like bees in general? Like, might it not even be about our beekeepers? Do you know?
I don't know. I didn't take the phone calls.
Okay, thank you. Joyce, do you, I know
Joyce,
since
yeah.
you're here, is there, do you want to weigh in on sort of your thoughts as another fellow beekeeper in the?
Yeah, so I did kind of the same thing that Mary's done is talk to all the other beekeepers I know in the city, and I found the same thing she did, that most of us would be in favor of a sensible ordinance that supports responsible beekeeping. Most of us do like the idea of registering and having people know where there are larger populations of bees in the city. And I think a big part of what this committee could do to help is educate the community. And Bridget, you had a really great question. What are the phone calls really concerning? Because if it's just about being stung or seeing lots of bees or something like that, which I mean certainly can be unnerving, particularly if you have an allergy, I would imagine that a lot of people are encountering yellow jackets, wasps, hornets rather than bees. And like Mary said, some of those yellow jackets look just like honeybees. And really honeybees will go to huge lengths to avoid interacting with people and avoid stinging. And so I think that there are probably a fair number of people that could benefit from a little bit of education about bees versus hornets and what can be done, how to recognize them, how to react, how to interpret their behavior, and determine whether you or your family are in any kind of danger. And I know that I don't think that this could be part of any kind of ordinance or policy, but I know that most beekeepers do keep EpiPens. And I know every beekeeper I've ever talked to said there's no way they would ever be without an EpiPen. And I think probably the idea of using your EpiPen on someone else is maybe a little questionable, but I think we all have EpiPens and none of us would hesitate if a neighbor or a kid or anybody near us got stung. None of us would hesitate to use our EpiPens. And again, because that's you need a prescription for that. I don't know that it could be written into any kind of ordinance or anything, but that could be part of an education campaign is, if you have a neighbor that has bees and your kid gets stung, that beekeepers, chances are has an EpiPen. But I do think that I've talked to some people on the in the pollinator friendly group that's in the city, and they also obviously love the bees and would be happy to pair with the committee on doing some sort of educational campaign. So I think that could be a big role that the committee could play in this.
Well, Joyce, I just wanted to say that I'm actually doing a talk at the rec center.
I saw that.
And I plan to at least provide an education in visual. Well, actually, I can't do visuals. I just found out that my PowerPoint can't be used. But being able, because it's going to be outside and there won't be a place to project images, but I'm going to figure out a way to do it because it's very important. And one of the things that I've encountered is that my neighbors who I asked before I put my hives in were all on board with it. And then my new neighbor, I also asked, because I have to get new bees again, package bees, because mine are now dead because of hornets. And I asked because we don't have fences where I live, and so the kids run through, and it's just a little different. And I haven't had anyone tell me no. But one of the things that I did was kind of surprised is how many people knew about the ordinance and were saying, we don't need an ordinance. They were kind of like up in arms about, we've had bees here all the time, and we have. Richard told me that on his property, there have been bees there continuously for 120 years.
Mhm.
And so that's an amazing thing. And then I also know that Tony Barron, who was a beekeeper at the front of the woods for a number of years, 2 years ago, he developed a sudden allergy to honeybees and was stung, and that's how he found out. And like you're saying, we all carry protection with us because that's something that you cannot predict. You don't know that. And as far as communicating that to folks, though, you're going to get stung if you step on a honeybee or if one gets into your hive and it gets into your veil or something and it gets mad because it can't get out. But it's very, very rare for honeybees to sting, whereas wasps and yellow jackets will definitely attack. If you are in a lighted area and it's becoming dusk, they will attack you. Yellow jackets for sure are attracted to light, just like moths are, and they will do that. But they are also pollinators, so I don't want to trash them completely, but I don't like them because they kill my bees. But I think the education thing is also very important, and I'm glad to hear that others support the idea of registering them.
Mhm.
Because I would not like to see there being a barrier, but I don't think that the city can actually um, prevent bees from being in the city.
Right.
And I don't think that the urban beekeepers are necessarily the only source of our honeybees. We definitely have honeybees. There was a story in Next Door about a swarm in Berkeley recently. That could have come from anywhere, and you it's the spring happened so soon and there were so many things for the bees to live off of that they're much more active than they would have been in previous years. This has kind of been crazy this past 4 weeks or so, and most beekeepers don't even start seeing activity with their bees until about this first week in April. We've been seeing them in March because the weather's been so warm. So I don't know what to tell you guys.
Could I ask two questions, if you don't mind? First of all, is the network of beekeepers okay with the regulation to have neighbors sign a consent form? Has there been any blowback from that?
Yes.
Anybody? There are people who resist that, or are they in support of it?
Would like an avenue for appeal.
Oh,
You know, it's reasonable
okay.
to require people to talk to their neighbors, and at the very least let their neighbors know
Okay.
about the bee situation. But I mean, anybody who's been on Nextdoor knows that people can get funny and
Yeah.
use lots of opportunities or any opportunity they can to work angles and fight battles. So I think that an appeal process would be a reasonable addition to a neighbor sign off.
Okay. Interesting.
Or
And
perhaps, oh, sorry.
sorry, I just had one other kind of technical question. What is the time frame? That is I know the city pulled the ordinance and they were going to re-examine it. Do you know when the idea is to bring it back?
I don't. Amy, you would probably know.
Not anytime soon. I asked Hank to work on kind of a primer about bees, and hives and beekeeping. So we're starting with a foundation, and then we'll
Does-
move into regulations if the commission wants to go in that direction.
Okay, I wonder if it could, so it sounds like there are a lot of people who know a lot of stuff about bees, and then we also have trained registered apiarists in Oakland County. So I wonder if we could work with the pro-pollinators, and as well as maybe bring, much like we did with solar, we could actually bring an apiarist to commission. Might that be a better way than a primer?
And I was going to say also, I talked to Rich Whiskey, who is the president of Southeast Michigan Beekeeping Association, and he's more than willing to come in and do some education with the city, with residents, et cetera. Also, Anna Heck from Michigan State is also willing to come in and help us with some education. And she's, I mean, Anna's really like the go-to in Michigan for anything relating to bees. And she works with Michigan State, mostly out of Tollgate over in Novi, but yeah, and she was more than willing to help. Rich was more than willing to help.
I'm so
Amy,
glad you contacted them.
is that something that that our committee should bring to the commission, or is that something, Amy, that you should do?
I think if coming from the commission, coming from your committee
Right.
would
Okay.
be appropriate recommendation.
I don't know if we need to, Ben, or do you feel like we need to have a motion about this? Are there people who are opposed to that, of kind of supporting, bringing in trained people and suggesting that?
Yeah, I mean,
city
it
commission?
sounds like a very fruitful, good next step. Whether I think we can proceed with, in the absence of anyone raising concerns. Sounds like a good course of action.
Amy, can I ask a question about working with Hank? I mean, the people that Joyce suggested to use as experts in beekeeping are excellent. And then we have our own resident with Richard, who has a master's degree in beekeeping from Cornell. And so, but I know that Rich Whiskey does a lot of education. He does a lot of beekeeping classes. And then Michigan State is basically the go-to place for the state of Michigan for its recommendations on bee farming as well as beekeeping in general. And I have heard, I forgot the name that you mentioned, Joyce, but I've heard her speak at the Iowa's Beekeeping Association a couple of years ago, and she was fantastic. So knowledgeable and so proactive in managing, in bee management and conservation, all those things. I would hate to have Hank have to reinvent the wheel
Yeah.
when there's so much information already out there that at least those two people, probably several people in the woods, would be able to drive him to the most current and under the most current information at the very least, and go from there. Because one of the things that concerned me about the whole beekeeping ordinance was that within, I would say, 24 hours of that city commission meeting, I received a phone call from a reporter to ask if they could interview me. And I couldn't get a sense on, it seemed to me to be like a tempest in a teapot. I thought this didn't need to get any further, but one of the things that I got a sense of was that it wasn't necessarily a good thing for it to be in our city, being one of the only cities in the state of Michigan who wants to restrict beekeeping. And I'm wondering if there's a way to kind of manage this more quickly so it can be resolved instead of letting it kind of hang out. Though some of us beekeepers have bees on order, and nobody wants to find out that the city is going to keep us, we're going to have to lose our hives. You know, each hive for me is about a $400 investment. So
Minimum.
yeah, I know. And I have, you know, so I've got 2 hives and I have an $800 investment there. I can't speak for other beekeepers. That's just on the hives. It has nothing to do with the equipment, has nothing to do with the suits that I have, because I also have a lot of those. But, you know, and I'm just wondering if there's a way for us to like move this forward with Hank in a way that the city will feel comfortable with the information that's being delivered, and they can make a decision on whether or not they feel the city needs an ordinance. Because I don't know, do we want to be the 4th city in the state that has one, and why? I like the idea of registering, because I registered in Iowa and I saw nothing wrong with that. But I don't know. We don't want to make it be a barrier, that's for sure. Not with the fees that were proposed, and not with the limit of the number of hives that were proposed.
And Mary, you have a really good point too. There are a lot of existing beekeepers in the woods, and
I
the
know.
ordinance as it appeared didn't provide any sort of grandfathering. And so
Right.
there are people that have thousands of dollars invested in their
Yes.
bees to then just be told, get rid of them. That was, I think, what really got a lot of people worked up.
Yeah. So, how do we make a motion to have Hank talk to beekeeping experts as opposed to do his internet research? Because quite honestly, Amy, that ordinance was so old and so out of date in terms of what we know now about urban beekeeping, that it was disappointing that that was a recommendation that the city was proposing. It seemed to me that there was a desire to keep beekeeping out of Huntington Woods. And it was written in a way that Ypsilanti originally wrote it, to keep beekeeping out of Ypsilanti. And my question is that what the city was originally wanting to do, is to just create a barrier? Because who's got a half an acre in this city? How would you, what was the intent of that particular ordinance? Why didn't it get written from what the state of Michigan State recommends, or any of the beekeeping associations recommend? Why that ordinance or that recommendation, as opposed to those that were more flexible and less restrictive?
The city attorney drew up the ordinance. So I can't tell you what the motivation was. And Hank is working with a resident beekeeper. I think it's Ben somebody, but and also with
Ben
Ben Bancroft. Yeah.
yes, and also somebody that does pest control. So it's not just internet-based research, but he has brought in those two individuals to help with the information.
You know that Ben does not have any bees in Huntington Woods.
Mhm.
He's not an urban beekeeper.
No,
His
he's a commercial.
Yes, and he's out on farms.
Hmm.
I
And
thought
there,
he had some on the second floor, a second floor porch or something.
I don't
that's,
think so.
No?
I thought last time I spoke with him, he told me he didn't have any bees
Okay.
on his property. But he is a commercial beekeeper, and the challenges that he has as a commercial beekeeper are not representative of the challenges of somebody who has hives in their backyard.
Okay.
Could we ask commission to get on the agenda either in May or in June with these apiarists and possibly a member of the beekeeping community of Huntington Woods to give a presentation, not a public hearing, but just a presentation as part of the city commission meeting?
I don't know if we're gonna do it in May. That's coming up pretty.
Well, yeah, I mean, June, I mean, as long as that is before they actually consider the ordinance.
Why don't you forward me the name that you decided on? And I could talk to them about a presentation. So
Okay,
whoever you collectively decide
Mary,
is
can
the
you,
best.
okay, Joyce and Mary, can you guys kind of figure?
Yeah,
Yeah.
So could I make a motion then that that working with our public, the environmental sustainability, that does not trip off my tongue well, committee is going to actively pursue urban beekeeping experts to provide information and education to the city, just something very broad like that. And
Yes,
that
I second that.
I'm gonna have to write that down, Aaron. I can't remember what I said.
Well, you're the secretary, so we'll just, whatever you write down, we'll approve it
Okay.
in next month's minute. But
Okay.
I think, yeah, I mean, I think that, you know, tapping into all of the nearby, I'm sure I would anticipate very willing and able expertise is a good, very good next step.
You know,
So we can all in favor of some version of that?
I
mean, I'm happy with us actually trying to propose ordinance, but it sounds like we all, like, this might be the better move.
Yeah, I mean, at least as a next step. I mean, to the extent that there's, I think where the ESC fits in here is like, if the city is going to have an ordinance, we want to make sure it's a, science-based and, pro-environment one, and not like a reactionary, problematic one. And so starting with experts and bring them to the table seems like where we go from here. And certainly defer to Mary, very grateful to have Joyce, our newest member of the Environmental Sustainability Committee. Welcome, Joyce. Half kidding, but there's always good to have green thumbs. And so where do we can go. Sorry, now the dog is getting me pulled in multiple directions here. So I'm gonna hand it back to Mary and Amy, and I know we have other stuff that we want to cover. So what's our next move?
Well, I guess we're coming back to our next meeting with the experts secured, and also securing a time to speak to the city commission. Would that be?
Yeah. Do we have anything more to say about the issue of bees? Or are we moving on to the next issue?
I think we should move on. So.
agree.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, thanks, guys. I'm going to bow out, but I am more than happy to help you in any way that I can. So don't hesitate to reach out.
Hey, Joyce, one
Thanks,
other
Joyce.
thing, sorry, is if the bee network has any kind of good literature on the environmental impact of the bee community and pollination. If you could send that along to us, that would help us.
Okay, we'll do.
Thank you.
I'm still here, but to the extent there's any sharing of subsequent agenda items and motions, let me hand that off to you, Aaron. How about that?
Okay, then let's jump back over to the campaign. Sarah Jo, do you just want to take over, please?
Yeah, I'm late and I apologize that I was supposed to get stuff out to Amy, to everyone after last meeting, but I have that now. I'm going to send right after this meeting. I have some more JPEGs on composting. I don't know if you had a chance to post any of the other ones that I'd done, or I know that I think I was gonna fix them for you on the carts, right? The purchase of the second carts, and so I don't know how much traction we've gotten off of that. I wanted to see if, one, they're usable, and secondly, if we think that we're getting any engagement or traction off of any of them. I don't know. I saw there was some write-up in the newsletter, but I haven't had a chance. I haven't been much on social, so I haven't had a chance to check. I don't know if anyone's heard any feedback, or if you've heard anything about has anyone had any contact with Sokra about the cardboard initiative at all, and if that how that's going. I'd love to hear and see if we need to change messaging or if we need to keep plugging it, and what actions we need to take.
Kara, do you know how many second recycling carts we sold at half off?
I think about 70 so far.
70?
Yes.
Wow, that's a lot. Okay. So that the word got out about that. You
Yep,
could use
and
a second-
counting. Every time I go to the office, there's 5 to 10 more orders. So the word is out, which is good.
I know I sent about a dozen emails to friends in the neighborhood and letting just kind of like a nice little nudge to say, hey, I don't know if you've heard, but you know, the whole cardboard issue, and that you can get a second cart if you want, and just to make sure that you're putting it in as a reminder.
Yep.
But
Great. So is there any more update on the cardboard crisis?
Tara, do you have any feedback from Tringali since?
No, I think it has improved as it was supposed to. So I think, you know, the word is out. People either are cutting the cardboard and putting it in the cart, which is what they're supposed to do, or they purchased a second cart. And honestly, I know Claire had talked about promoting box in a box, and you can still put it on the curb. And off the record, I've told people, you know, if you have a couple pieces of cardboard that won't fit in the cart and you put it neatly next to your cart, I'm sure the recycling people will pick it up and recycle it. But we can't promote that. We can't say that because our contract says that they won't do that, and Tringali said that they won't do that. But I think the nice recycling guy who's bothering to pick up the cart is going to bother to pick up that little piece of cardboard too. It's just that slippery slope of saying it's okay to have a few boxes and then it turns into a mountain, which is what it happened.
Well,
I think it's working great.
Isn't it the case too that we're trying to train them, because eventually, Amy, we're going to go, or Tara, they're going to go to a manual,
Yes.
not a manual, like a electronic arm of some sort.
Yes.
They're going to auto pick them up, and they wouldn't be able to pick up something that's sitting next to
Right.
it. So
They don't get out of their
train
trucks
people.
anymore at that point.
Right. So is it okay if people put them on top of the cart, or is that doesn't?
I don't think we can promote that, but I think a little bit on top of the cart is probably fine. But
Yeah.
I don't want to advertise any of that because Tringali told us everything must be in the cart. The website says that, Sacra promotes that, and we have to stick by that. But a little bit here or there is probably going to be recycled. Yes.
When are they doing this shift, this change?
A week ago.
I mean, to this new,
Oh, the trucks, they've never said, but
oh, okay, okay.
it's when they upgrade their fleets.
Okay.
And I live in Farmington and I worked for Farmington Hills. Our trucks, different contractor, but that's the kind of trucks that we have for our big recycling carts. And they have a mechanical arm that just reaches out, dumps it. Nobody gets out of the truck. It's the way that all of recycling is going. And so Tringali told my boss that they will eventually be getting that equipment when they upgrade their fleet. So it's just a matter of time.
Okay.
Tara, let me ask you this. What do people do in terms of if an item is too big to fit in the cart? You know, I've seen people set out like, you know, a plastic toy or something that's like sticks out of the cart. I mean, what do they do in that instance?
Well, number one, plastic toys, like I always think of little tykes, chairs and things. Those are not recyclable at Sakura anymore. So that's just trash. They won't even take them for drop off. They used to, but for whatever reason, it's just, there must not be an end market for it. I think if something's sticking up out of the cart a little bit, that's fine. It still goes in the recycling truck.
Okay.
And Daniel, Tara's comment was pointed directly at you with those little tykes. You're the only one who has those left in their house. So I wonder if in the fall or something, if we could kind of put it on our calendar to do a reminder to everyone to put, to kind of corral their cardboard in preparation for the holiday season when cardboard explodes.
Or could we, as a committee, could we do some kind of drive? Could we do some kind of cardboard drive? Because I mean, it gets excessive. Like, I mean, I get grocery delivery once a week in a box, like a fruit delivery, and I get like 2 boxes. And with the amount of stuff that I'm also recycling, I'm getting a second cart. But at the same time, if I can imagine what people are getting shipped on top of that kind of stuff during the holidays, it won't even fit in 2 carts probably. Or just, you know, there'll be like probably, you know, a 3-week or 2-week window or something where there would be a mass of like, is there something we can do to encourage people? Because, you know, not everyone's going to spend time, I mean, cutting up all of those boxes. Is there something that we can start to plan for in advance to do some kind of drive, like an extra drive?
Sakura has several events already planned. If you subscribe to their emails or whatever.
But in December, I hardly ever see
December.
I hardly ever see anything in the winter months. It's all now. Right. It's all spring drives, I feel like.
Summer, right.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I don't know.
Is that done directly from Sakura, or is that like through a city saying we want to host it, we want to, you know, to do a drive?
There are cities that work directly with Sakura, but they are cities that have big areas a big footprint to have cars and vendors and dumpsters and everything. And we don't have that in our city. So as a Sakura community, we're allowed to use the one that's coming up in Oak Park soon in Royal Oak. But you're right, they're just April, May, June. I don't see anything for later in the year like December, and I never have seen anything in the fall. And maybe Sakura will plan something. I don't know. No, they haven't as of yet.
That's a good idea. Well, I guess something to come back to.
Yeah, I just don't want to miss. I don't know if we can keep that in our minds or put it on a later agenda, but I don't want to miss the opportunity to, you know, people take the easy way out and are just, you know, putting them. Although, I mean, I don't know how that works. If you're saying that things have to go in the bin, the recycling bin, how is that different than trash to me? How is that different than if you're not taking the time to like break it down and put it in your bin, but if you're just going to set it out and they're going to pick it up for trash, isn't it the same people and it's just a different truck? Or is it it's the same company, it's the same process? So
right.
I think it seems so counterintuitive.
I think the problem might have been that a lot of those boxes have trash in them and packing material and things that aren't recyclable. I think that's the true problem. I know I get Sunbasket meal delivery and it has ice packs and all these things, and I'm guilty of sometimes just setting it out on the curb, and I know it won't be recycled because it's full of stuff. So I think that is the big problem, especially with the pandemic.
Okay, so part of the education process needs to be that as well, to take the things out that are not recyclable and make sure that they're in the trash, like clean out your boxes.
Yes,
Okay.
Yep. Clean them out, cut them up, put them in the cart. But people just, we all do it. We just get lazy and you just throw it out there. So that's I think been the problem lately.
Sarah, you just made a really great little advertisement.
I was thinking the same thing.
Mary, I hope you got that down.
Yeah.
What was it?
Well, it's
Clean
being
it out,
I think I
recorded, we
got
can-
it. I think I got it too.
clean it out, cut it up.
Clean
put
them
it in
out,
the
cut them
cart.
up. Yeah.
Okay.
And then like we have to have a little explainer. The other thing that the thing that you said, Sarah, Joe, that it's no different than your trash. Put it in the bin.
Yeah.
I would like to say we put it in the damn bin, but I know we can't.
Yeah. I mean, I think we can come up with, if we need, we can come up with some creative advertising later on. Yeah, but okay. Other than that, I don't think that there's anything left on our agenda. Is there? You all know that we got the name changed, and that's it. So, okay, I think that's it. Everybody enjoy the rest of your night. Don't get stung by a bee.
Not tonight.
Yeah.
Don't provoke the bees. Let them do what they need to do.
Okay. All
We
right.
need that more than they need us.
Good.
right.
Okay,
Let's adjourn.
bye.
Good night.
Bye.
Good night, everybody.